So now it's official, but I think the live streaming has not officially started yet. So I'm just trying to wait. I am just waiting for the system to say that we are live. Oh, now it says unable to live stream. See, this is why I do it a little bit early. Okay. So let me try it again.
So far, there are 7 participants.
Okay.
8.
Do you post it on the website afterwards? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
So that it's
Yes.
accessible? That's great.
I'm sorry. I just need a moment here.
Where do you live, Julia?
Oh, we didn't
I
hear.
live in
Okay.
Princeton.
Oh, nice. Worked down there for almost 15 years.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, in Carnegie Center.
Okay.
Yep.
Lots of participants.
Is 17 just the participants, or does that include us?
That includes us, 10
That's what I
attendees.
thought. Yeah.
There are 10 participants. For you attendees, the reason for the delay is we're trying to live stream this.
Why do we need to live stream if the Zoom is available? We just need to record it.
Ken, you're muted. You must be talking to somebody.
I mean, we're on Zoom. We don't need to live stream. But I'll leave it to Ken.
Is Kevin on with us?
Yes,
Yes.
Kevin's there.
Ken is on. I'm still having difficulty with the live streaming. I'm just gonna give me 30 seconds more, okay?
Technology is great when it works.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I don't know we're not gonna be able to go live stream, but this is being recorded.
Good.
And we should be able to post this after the meeting. So why don't I do this? It's about, according to my clock, 6 minutes after 7. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Counselor, could you please read the Open Public Meetings Act notice and then take roll call?
Yes, sir. This is the Open Public Meetings Act notice. I hereby announce that pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in the notice, which was sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, and posted on the bulletin board in Township Hall and filed in the Township Clerk's office. And now for a roll call, Commissioner Burke,
Here.
Commissioner Buffalino,
Here.
Commissioner Gilstein,
Here,
Vice Chair Kastning,
Here,
and Chair Kinji.
Present. Okay, thank you. So we have a quorum. If you could all please stand, and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a moment of silence to honor our troops both here and abroad that work tirelessly to protect us each and every day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Remain standing for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Okay, we've got a quick business order to take care of. If I can get a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the January 27th meeting, please.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm just going to do a voice vote on this, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes for the January 27th meeting is now hereby approved. Okay, so before we turn to our guest speakers, I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments made at prior meetings for the benefit of those who are new to our proceedings. First of all, there's been some relaxing of COVID rules and some public bodies that have returned to conducting meetings on an in-person basis. However, the Charter Study Commission is at a stage where our meetings involve guest speakers, all of whom are from our town. As an example, Ed Sosdelli from the New Jersey Division of Local Government Services, who made an excellent presentation of the various alternate forms of local government, lives more than 100 miles from Homedale. The commission would like to return to in-person meetings. However, we also recognize the value and the benefit of hearing from our town expert speakers. Those speakers have expressed a strong preference and the need to come before the commission on a virtual basis rather than in person. So the commission is an independent public body and accordingly will make the decision based on the best interest to accomplish its statutory mandate. Therefore, we will evaluate the situation and will return to in-person meetings when we feel it's appropriate. But regardless of whether meetings are conducted on a virtual or in-person basis, the public can still continue to hear and watch our proceedings in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Secondly, since the very beginning of our proceedings, we indicated that our plan is divided into 3 phases. The first phase is the study of our current form of local government. The second phase is to explore alternative forms of local government. The third and final phase is to deliberate and make decisions for any recommendations. We have now concluded phase 1. At the last meeting, we presented a summary of what we heard from the elected officials during our study of the Township Committee form of government. We are now in phase 2 to explore the alternate forms of government. We will hear from 2 experts from various alternate forms of local government that could be considered. In addition to the expert presentations, we thought it would be beneficial to hold direct discussions with elected officials in towns within Monmouth County that currently operate under those alternative forms of local government, including the different options within those forms. For example, where the mayor is elected directly by voters or not, and where elections are held on a partisan or a nonpartisan basis. We started with an interview with the mayor of Ocean Township, which operate under the council manager form of local government, with elections held on a nonpartisan basis, but the mayor is not elected directly. At the last meeting, we interviewed the council president of Tinton Falls, which operate under the mayor council form of government, in which the mayor is elected directly by voters. The mayor council form of government allows election to be held on a partisan or nonpartisan basis. Tinton Falls opted to hold its election on a nonpartisan basis. Tonight, we are pleased that have with us Mayor Marlboro. He'll be logging in soon, which also operates under the mayor council form of government. However, Marlboro opted to hold its elections on a partisan basis. We plan to have two different elected officials from the council manager form of government, where the mayor is elected directly by voters in partisan and nonpartisan elections. When phase 2 is concluded, we will then move to phase 3, where we would discuss, deliberate, and make decisions on possible recommendations. Just to be clear, despite what you may see on the social media, the commission has not made any decisions on any recommendations it may make. All our meetings are recorded, and the public can watch the video recordings of the proceedings. Ultimately, any recommendations by this commission are subject to approval or disapproval by all Homedale residents in a public referendum. With that, we will turn to our guest speakers for tonight. In phase 1, we received significant comments about the local county committee, the so-called line, and what have been described as interferences from party bosses outside of the local town, because elections are held on a partisan basis under the township committee form of government. In phase 2, we learned that under alternate forms of government, elections can be held on either partisan or nonpartisan basis. We are pleased to have with us our first speaker, Dr. Julia Sass-Rubin from Rutgers University. She is one of New Jersey's leading experts on ballot design and the line under partisan elections. Dr. Rubin currently serves as an associate professor and has been part of the faculty of the Edward J. Brownstein School of Planning and Public Policy since 2003. She is also an associate visiting professor at Princeton University's Princeton School of International and Public Affairs. Dr. Rubin's research interests include nonprofit and public organizations, processes, developmental finance, and the intersection of educational policy, community development, and social justice. Dr. Rubin has advised a number of organizations, including the United States Small Business Administration, the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. Previously, she consulted for McKinsey & Company, worked in brand management for Procter & Gamble and Eastman Kodak companies, and taught strategic management and marketing at Assumption University, interesting place in Bangkok, Thailand, as a Henry Luce Scholar. Prior to joining the Brownstein School of Faculty, Dr. Rubin was a postdoctoral fellow at the Alfred A. Tauman Center for Public Policy at Brown University. Dr. Rubin earned her PhD and MA from Harvard University, an MBA with distinction from Harvard Business School, and an AB with honors from Harvard Radcliffe College. Welcome, and thank you, Dr. Rubin, for being here, especially out of your busy schedule.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Let me
So
share
with
my.
that,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, please.
I think we made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your presentation. With that, let me turn it over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So I think my task is to speak a little bit about the county line and to share some of my research on this topic. It sounds like it was a focus of discussion already in the prior meeting. So I'm just going to flesh out, I guess, some of the details. And let me begin by just contextualizing this a little bit. The reason that the primary ballot and the county line are so important is that in New Jersey, winning the primary is tantamount to winning the general election in much of the state, because our districts, both legislative and to some degree congressional, tend to be very favorable to one party or the other. So winning the primary becomes extra important, and anything that skews the results of that primary becomes extra important to the ultimate outcome of the election. So what I found in my research in looking at the primary ballots in all 50 states in the District of Columbia is that New Jersey's primary ballots are unique. Our ballots are unlike that of any other state or those of any other state or DC. Most states and DC have a ballot, a primary ballot that looks like this. This is called an office block ballot. And the reason it's called office block is you can see that there are these blocks in which you can clearly identify the position that candidates are running for at the top, and then all the candidates are listed below that position. So it's very easy for the voter to determine who their choices are when they're voting. In a couple of states, principally Delaware and parts of Pennsylvania, excuse me, ballots look a little bit different. They put the candidates instead of below the position to the right of the position. And I just want to clarify, ballots vary within states, obviously, but this, I looked at a significant portion of the counties within each state. So there may be some aberrations, but this accounts for the majority of all ballots in the country. So again, in a few states, ballots look a little bit different in that the candidates are listed to the right, but you can still tell who your choices are as a voter. By contrast, in all but 2 of New Jersey's counties, primary ballots are organized around the county line, or some people refer to it as the party line, which of course consists of all the party endorsed candidates. And those are shown in either a vertical or a horizontal order, depending on how the primary ballot is laid out. So this is a 2021 Essex County Republican primary ballot, and Essex is one of 5 counties that have a horizontal ballot design, and the county line is in row E. This is a 2018 Democratic primary ballot from Camden County. This is a vertical ballot, and the county line is in column 2. And just to introduce something familiar, this is a 2020 Homedale Township Republican primary ballot, and of course the county line is in column 8. So the county line provides candidates who've been endorsed by the party with many advantages. First of all, prime ballot position. As you can see from the Essex and the Camden examples, the line is almost always either the first or second column or row. So it's easy for the voter to see it when he or she enters the voting booth or opens their paper ballot. Second of all, the line is headed by generally the best known candidate running that cycle. So if we look at the Camden ballot in 2018, it was Senator Menendez. Of course, in 2020, it was then Vice President Biden and President Trump. And every cycle, it would be whoever is most likely to be known to the voters, either the senator or presidential candidates, etc. And so everyone else on the line gains legitimacy from the fact that they are associated by being on the line with this best known candidate, and that helps them. Candidates not on the county line are placed always in separate columns or rows, and sometimes those columns or rows are separated from the county line by blank columns or rows. So we see that here on the Republican ballot, where you have blank spaces between the candidates, and it's really difficult to understand the logic of that, why there's certain spaces here or there. And we of course see that in the Camden ballot, where you have actually 6 blank columns between Donald Norcross, who was running in 2018 for re-election to Congress for the House of Representatives, and the 2 people who ran against him. And even more confusing for the voters, in the Camden ballot, the 2 people who are running for the House of Representatives against Norcross are running against each other, and yet they are placed not only 6 columns away, but actually one on top of each other. And so a voter who notices that they're there might be inclined to vote for both of them because they think that they're actually running together, like the voters in the county line. Excuse me. This design, this uniquely New Jersey design, violates many rules of good ballot design. And I want to focus on the most important rule that it violates. And here I'm going to be drawing on the excellent work of the Brennan Center at NYU. these county line ballots have very murky contest boundaries. So the problem is that voters cannot tell which candidates are running for each office. And that is a terrible problem when it comes to ballot design. So a good, clear boundary ballot for a machine ballot would look like this. I apologize. I just realized I'm not in display mode. Let me just start that one over. So for a machine ballot, it would look like this, which this is actually a general election ballot, but it doesn't matter because it's the same principle. So all you ideally would see when you walk into a voting booth, if you're voting by machine, is one office at a time. So in this case, you would see the lieutenant governor position and the two candidates who are running for lieutenant governor. And then you would click next and you would go to the next set of choices. And the thinking here is that it is sufficiently confusing just to be in a voting booth with very little time to make your decision, trying to figure out the technology. You want to simplify the decision as much as possible for the voter. For a paper ballot, a clear boundary ballot would look like one that I showed you from Elpa, Nevada. Again, it's very obvious what position is that the candidates are running for and who is running for each office. So the choices for the voter are very clear. By contrast, here are some examples of what New Jersey primary ballots look like. So this is from the 2017 Middlesex County Democratic primary. The contest for governor is up here. Can you tell what the contest boundaries are in that race? Who are your choices if you're a voter, a Democratic primary voter in Middlesex County? Excuse me. It turns out that there are 6 people who were running for governor that year. 5 of them were in row A, and for reasons that are completely difficult to ascertain or impossible to ascertain, the 6th candidate was in row B and 4 columns over. Excuse me. How about this 2020 Union County Democratic primary ballot? Can you tell what the contest boundaries are for the members for the House of Representatives race? As it turns out, there were 3 candidates running. One of them was in column B. There was a space in column A, and then there were 2 more spaces in C and D, and then you had 2 more candidates over here on the right. Again, really inexplicable for voters and very confusing. How about this 2020 Democratic primary ballot from Mercer County? And I don't mean to pick on Democrats. This is really a nonpartisan issue. It's just as bad in the Republican contest. I just happened to pick these particular ballots for no real reason. So in this House Representatives race, can you tell what the contest boundaries are? Who are your choices as a voter? As it turns out, there are 3. 2 of them are in column A. And again, one for reasons that are not clear at all. I mean, I can explain why they're in column B versus column A, but to a voter walking into the voting booth, it's not clear why you would have a candidate in B and 2 in A. And so it's very easy for the voter to get confused and miss some of their choices or overvote. And this kind of confusion and overvotes and undervotes are quite apparent. When I analyzed the 2020 primary results, I found substantial overvotes and undervotes. In fact, in this ballot that I just showed you with 2 candidates in column A and 1 in column B, what resulted, and this was the year that we were all voting on paper ballots, what happened was 1/3 of all the people who voted in that contest in the 4th Congressional District Democratic primary overvoted. They essentially voted for both Christine Conforti and Stephanie Schmidt, even though the direction said vote for one, because this is the county line and people are trained to vote for everybody in the county line in New Jersey. And so they just voted automatically and voted for both of them, getting their ballots discarded for that contest. Now, a small overvote like 1% would be substantial and would be considered a serious ballot design problem. When 1/3 of your ballots are thrown out because of overvotes, that is just, it's unheard of. It's a tremendous problem in terms of ballot design and the impact on democracy.
I'm sorry,
And this is-
Dr. Rubin, just want to clarify, because I think you use the term odd here. When you say overvote, that I think you kind of explained it, but I just want to make sure it's clear.
They voted for 2
That's
people.
what happened when a voter voted more than 1 or 2, whatever the number that they
Right.
want.
So here,
in your example, it says vote for 1, but they vote for 2, then it gets disqualified and gets thrown out. And so their vote actually didn't get counted. Is that
right, in that contest, if you vote in any contest, if you vote for more people than you're allowed, so in this case, as you said, it's vote for one, your vote just is not counted because it's an overvote. You haven't indicated a preference. And if you leave the ballot blank for a particular contest, that's considered an undervote. And again, of course, your vote doesn't count because they don't know who you wanted to vote for. So you're essentially disenfranchised because you're voting for too many people. The ballot isn't thrown out for everybody else. For example, if they voted for county clerk and freeholders or commissioners, then it was called, of course, freeholders, those votes would still count. But their votes in this contested primary for House representatives would not count because they voted twice, essentially. They voted once, but they voted for two people.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for pointing out the clarification. So parties enhance this problem in a way. They kind of encourage people to vote the line, which makes it worse, which leads to additional confusion. So for example, this is flyer went out this past summer in Mercer County to Democratic primary voters. And it says, attention Democratic voters, please come out and show your support. Vote column A on June 8th for our Mercer County Democratic candidates. Now, of course, everyone in the primary is a Democrat, but by sending out material like this, telling voters to vote the line, column A or column B or wherever the line is, the parties reinforce the idea that voters just come in and they kind of blindly vote, thinking that that is who the Democrats are, or that is who the real Republicans are. And so that further undermines the idea of the ballot being an accurate reflection of voters' will. They're kind of conditioned to vote a certain way. Not surprisingly, for all these reasons, all these advantages, being on the county line translates into a substantial electoral advantage. So historically, we see that in the fact that no state legislative incumbent, so anyone running for the state legislature who has already served previously, no incumbent who was on the county line has lost a primary for the last 12 years. And you might think, well, incumbents generally win. They have an inherent advantage, and that's true. But when you look at New Jersey relative to the rest of the country, you realize how out of line we are. So there's only 2 states that hold their state legislative elections on odd years, us and Virginia. In last year's primary in 2021, 5 state legislative incumbents in Virginia lost in the primary. If you look at the 2020 primary, which would be the rest of the country in this cycle, so it's a 2-year cycle, 154 state legislative incumbents lost in 2020. So between 2020 and 2021, 159 state legislative incumbents lost. That's just one cycle. In New Jersey, in 6 cycles, not a single state legislative incumbent has lost as long as they have the line. And this is true beyond the state legislature. I looked at congressional incumbents and I looked at the last 50 years. And what I found is that there have been no congressional incumbents who are on the county line who have lost a primary in that time. In fact, only 2 congressional incumbents have lost a primary at all. And in both cases, they were running against another incumbent after redistricting when one of their districts was eliminated. And in both cases, the incumbent who had the line or had the line in the larger county in the district won. In contrast, nationally, just in 2020, 8 congressional incumbents were defeated in primary elections. So again, 50 years versus 8 just in 1 year, 50 years 0 versus 8 in just 1 year. So we are just very out of alignment historically with the rest of the country. In 2020, I had an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper on the impact of the line. If you recall, all of us were voting on paper ballots because of COVID, and there were a number of contests at the primary level where endorsements were split. So for example, there were 3 House races where different candidates were endorsed by different counties in the same congressional district, or in the Senate race on the Republican side, there were 5 candidates and they split the endorsements between them. And so I was able to compare what happens when you're on the county line in one county in the same district, or off the county line in another county and someone else has the line. And what I found is that there were 4 races like this. On average, it translated into a 35 percentage point advantage. So being on the county line in one county versus not being on the county line and having your opponent on the line in another county within the same congressional district translated into an average of 35 percentage points, which of course is an overwhelming margin. It's virtually insurmountable. And this was true. The range was in one of those races, it was 25 percentage points. In the statewide Senate primary and the Republican US Senate primary, the margin was 50 percentage points. So the average was 35, but even at 25, that's a really substantial difference. Let me give you one example of that. This is the 3rd Congressional District Republican primary for Congress. There were 2 candidates and 2 counties. Kate Gibbs had received the county line in Burlington, and David Richter had received the county line in Ocean. And of course, they each won the county in which they were on the line. For Kate Gibbs, being on the county line in Burlington versus having David Richter on the county line in Ocean was a difference of 34 percentage points. For David Richter, in reverse, it was a difference of 35 percentage points to have the county line versus having Kate Gibbs on the county line. So that's just one example of these races. Then look, 2021 primaries. We didn't have these kinds of, excuse me, very many split endorsements. This is, of course, the legislative primary versus the congressional one. But it was unusual in that there were a lot of incumbents who lost the line. And what I found is that in looking at the line versus incumbency, the line won every time. So, for example, 5-term Assemblywoman Betty Lou DeCroce lost re-election after she lost the line in Morris County. She is, of course, a Republican. She had the line in the 2 other counties in her district, but Morris is the largest county, and so she lost because she lost that line. Assemblywoman and Deputy Republican Whip Serena DeMasso lost re-election after she lost the line in Monmouth. I'm guessing you're very familiar with this example. Assemblyman Auth and Assemblywoman Buccio did manage to win re-election, but they split endorsements. So they were on the line in Bergen and off the line in Passaic. They have both in their district, and they performed 11 percentage points better in Bergen than they did in Passaic, which is not consistent with prior performance in years when they've run in the past. The only real difference was where they were on the line versus not. These results were so dramatic that several journalists pointed out 2021 was the year of the line, or the line wins. But in reality, in New Jersey, the line always wins. The impact of that on our politics is really corrosive. So if you consider how the line is awarded, although there are some counties where there are conventions and there are ostensibly municipal party committees that vote on the line, in reality, the decision to award the line really lies with the 21 Republican and 21 Democratic county party chairs through a process that I won't take you down the rabbit hole in explaining, but in essence, they have the power to grant the line. And sometimes they defer to local municipal committees, sometimes they defer to county committees, but they really don't have to. And in much of the state, they do not. So really, decisions about who gets the line and who thereby wins the primary, and because of the way our primaries function as the general election, who essentially gets to serve in office, comes down to 42 people in our state. The candidates who are not selected by the party chairs drop out in much of the state. And so we have very few choices for voters at the primary level. And of course, again, the primary is the general election. For example, in 2021, I just randomly 2 ballots from large cities in New Jersey. So one is from Essex and one is from Mercer. And you can see that there are virtually no contested races. This was consistent for most of the state. In the legislature, there were 240 state positions that were on the ballot for the New Jersey legislature in 2021. 10% of them were contested, 24 out of 240. I think we've gotten so used to not having any real choices at the primary level that it doesn't even shock New Jersey voters. But when you look at what's happening in states next to us, it's really striking. For example, our primary was in early June. In May, there was a primary in Pennsylvania. This is a ballot from Pittsburgh. This is a Democratic primary because the 2 prior ones I showed you were also Democratic. So this is another democratically controlled city right in the state next to ours. in this contest, there were 4 mayoral candidates for 1 position in the primary, 39 judicial candidates for 9 positions, and 2 sheriff candidates for 1 position. This is what democracy is supposed to look like. Voters are supposed to have choices. But in New Jersey, we really do not, because candidates understand that if they're not endorsed, they really have very little chance of winning. And so they just drop out. Another impact of that is that of the line is that elected officials understand that the real power lies not with the voters, but with the party leadership. And so they become beholden to a few party leaders rather than being concerned about the will of the voters, especially in districts that are heavily biased towards one party or the other. One party or the other is more powerful, and especially in positions at the county level or cross-county level where there's just not a lot of voter awareness of candidate names, then the power of the line becomes even more important. And that leads to a lot of the problems we've seen in our state over the years: a lack of transparency in government, some inside dealing, patronage, and of course, corruption. So there are a couple of efforts underway to try to correct for this problem. One option would be for the legislature to essentially pass legislation reforming our primary ballots and bringing them in line with the rest of the country. Again, we are the only state that has a ballot that looks like this. That is not likely to happen because the legislature would be punished, or individual legislators would be punished. Any that have tried to step out and endorse such reform have quickly heard from their party chairs, and they have generally backed off. There is a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the county line primary ballot. It was filed in federal court in July 2020. And initially it just had 1 plaintiff, Christine Conforti from that Mercer County ballot I showed you, where 1/3 of the ballots were cast out for the congressional race. Excuse me, in January 2021, 5 other candidates joined her, as well as the New Jersey Working Families Alliance joined as well. And the defendants are the 6 county clerks in Atlantic, Bergen, Hudson, Mercer, Middlesex, and Ocean counties. There was an amicus brief filed in June of 2021 by the League of Women Voters of New Jersey and Salvation and Social Justice, which was represented by the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and Campaign Legal Center. There's a federal judge who has been assigned to the case. It's actually, the judge was switched, so we're on the 2nd judge, and they are waiting for a court date. So that is to come. It could be a real earthquake in New Jersey if that decision goes against the county line. Another path for reform is a campaign by the Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, which is a non-partisan grassroots group, which in full disclosure, I am part of. And that campaign is called the Better Ballots New Jersey campaign. 72 organizations have signed a resolution to shift from a county line ballot to an office block primary ballot. So essentially go from this is a Mercer County 2016 county line primary ballot, to this. It's the same ballot, but in 2016, machine ballots in Mercer look like the ballot on the left and paper ballots look like the ballot on the right. And you can see how easy it is as a voter to tell what position you're voting for and who your choices are versus over here, which is much more unclear and confusing. So that resolution is gaining steam, but it's non-binding. And then finally, we come to what's happening in several communities across the state, which is local efforts at reform. And in Princeton and Maplewood, that has consisted of efforts to change the primary ballot at the local level. And then, of course, in other communities like Red Bank, there is another charter commission going on, and they are looking at moving to a nonpartisan local government, essentially to eliminate the line. Before I wrap up, I just wanted to speak to what's happening in Princeton and Maplewood with primary ballot reform, because people don't have the ability to force the legislature to change the law. And so this is the only way they can really take action, is at the local level. So the reform is to place all the local primary candidates on the county line. So it keeps the local government partisan, but everybody goes on the same line. So this is what the Princeton ballot looks like. It has looked like this for about 8 years. So this is the council candidates. There were 2 spots, But in this particular contest, all three challengers are listed one beneath the other. And this is what Princeton's ballots look like every year now. No matter how many people are running for council or mayor, at the primary level, they're all on the line. They do give preference to the endorsed candidates. They go first, but everyone's on the line. And people do still run even if they're not endorsed, and they win even if they're not endorsed. So the ballot position really matters. So
Julia,
yes.
what had to be done to get that to happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me share Maplewood with you, and then I'll come back to that question if I may, because it's
Sure.
a really excellent question.
Okay.
So this is the 2020, by the way, Princeton ballot. So what
Mhm.
happened in Maplewood was that they also wanted to do something like this because they found that when the endorsements would come out from the municipal committee, and Maplewood's a very democratic town like Princeton, but I think the phenomena, again, cuts across both parties. It's just whichever party's in charge, whoever doesn't get endorsed would drop out. And the Maplewood Democratic Municipal Committee was unhappy about that. They wanted people to stay in the contest to have choices for voters. And so they commissioned a subcommittee to look at this issue. And the subcommittee came back with a recommendation, and they adopted that recommendation a little while ago, which was, I know it's a lot of text, but I'll walk you through it. In essence, do pretty much what Princeton is doing. So all the primary candidates at the local level who want to be on the county line would be placed on the county line. And if that line is not available for any reason, they would be placed on a separate line, but all together. And the other kind of striking thing about this is actually a one-year pilot they're running to test this idea, but it's going to be this coming year. The other striking thing that's unusual is that the local municipal committee can endorse no candidates, or as many candidates as they want. So even though there are only 2 spots on the city council, they can choose to endorse everyone who's running, which of course leaves the choice to the voters. That does, again, it doesn't differentiate between the candidates and lets the voters decide. Just to give you a sense of what that would look like, this is the Maplewood 2021 primary ballot, and this is a mock-up of that, which has 5 people running for 2 positions, and all of them presumably could be endorsed, or you could just have a couple endorsed. It doesn't matter. The only way you would know is the tags. So in this case, you've got the official tagline for these 2 on the left, and the others have different taglines, but they're all on the line. And if the line was not available for any reason, then it would look like this, where everyone running at the local level would be on a different line, but they'd still be together. So the voter would still have a clear sense of who their choices are in that contest. But let me just come out of this presentation, and I'm happy to answer. That's a great question, as I said, and any other questions you might have. So technically, that is entirely at the discretion of the county chair, because they serve as the campaign manager for the commissioners. And that rabbit hole I was trying not to drag you down on, I won't drag you into it, but essentially that's what gives them the power to decide who gets the line. And so what happened in the case of Princeton and in the case of Maplewood, of course, Essex. So in Princeton, they had to get the approval of the county Democratic Party chair, and she approved, and it has just stayed that way. No one has dared to, even though there's a different chair now, no one has dared to go back on that commitment, because it's become the norm now, and the expectation is that it will continue that way. In Essex, it's the same. And Leroy Jones, who is the Democratic Party chair in Essex, and of course the state party chair, actually came to a meeting of the Maplewood Democratic Municipal Committee, and he was asked before they decided to do this if he would support it, and he said that he believes in democracy, and so he would. And so they went ahead and voted, and now the county clerk is examining ways to structure the ballot this way.
Great, thank you very much. Before I open up for any questions, I just want to welcome Mayor John Hornett from Marlboro. I appreciate it. I know you also had a tight schedule, and we originally had you, I think we told you the meeting started at 7, and unfortunately it was my fault. I didn't tell you that. You may not be on at 7, my apologies. But if you can give us a few minutes just to wrap up any questions for Dr. Rubin, we'll be right with you, Mayor. All right. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Rubin?
I assume if the judge makes a decision, it'll be appealed, correct?
I think
And,
that's probably a safe assumption.
Yeah, do you think it'll go all the way to the Supreme Court?
I don't know. I think Kevin's probably a better person to ask about that than I am. I'm not an attorney and I try not to play one on TV, so,
Okay.
or on
No, I
Zoom.
In any
It's about
event,
things I don't know about, so.
in any event, we may not see a change for quite some time, right?
It would be an earthquake, even if they appeal it, I think it would be really an earthquake. It is federal court, so I don't know how that would play out as far as, how far up the chain of command it would go. Or the legal chain, obviously.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have any idea of the history of how New Jersey got here and other states all got to some more democratic place?
Such a great question. There is an attorney by the name of Brett Pugach who wrote a law review article for Rutgers Law School Law Review. And he goes through this quite extensively, how we ended up here. It's a combination of, I guess, bad state Supreme Court decisions and legislation. And we are, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know, we are a political machine state. And there were more political machine states 50 years ago, but we have stayed a pretty strong political machine state, and most of the others have gotten much weaker. And I think that the primary difference is that we have this line because it allows the party so much power that it's very hard to get around the party. There's a lot of other institutional structural things in New Jersey, like we don't have INR, we don't have initiative and referendum. So there's no way to walk around the legislature, so to speak, right? Everything has to go through the legislature. We can't change the Constitution. We can't do anything without legislative approval. And there's a lot of other factors, like we have a very split up media market. So people don't focus on statewide issues. I mean, I won't go into my whole spiel, but there's a lot of reasons that have allowed political machines to stay very strong in our state, whereas other states have moved away from that. So this ballot, even though it was always a little outside the norm, but it wasn't as much unusual in prior decades. And I think that as other states have changed, we have not.
Julia, do you think this was part of the reason why the state passed the Faulkner Act?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know. I'm gonna take a pass on that one.
Okay. Just seems like they gave you an alternative way to do things that don't exist, but they carved something into the law, albeit back in 1950, to allow some options to be introduced into municipal governments that didn't exist at the time. Yeah.
I mean, the machines go back well over 100 years. And of course, Woodrow Wilson battled them. And so I don't know the history of the Faulkner Act and what precipitated that. So I don't want to weigh in.
Okay, thank you.
It's a great question, though. I will now look that up.
Send me your answer when you.
I know.
A new paper
Or you
you
send
can
me yours when you figure it out.
Oh, we hope.
All
Yeah.
right. If there are any other questions, just more going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Rubin.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate that. It
Pleasure.
was really informative.
so much.
Great.
It supports a lot of the comments we've been hearing as part of our study. So we really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. And I'm going to go listen to all those comments. I'm really intrigued. So good luck with all this. It's very
Okay.
nice to meet all of you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Likewise,
see
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so our next speaker, as I mentioned earlier, we started the process where not only are we getting expert presentations on the various alternate forms of government, but the commission thought it would make a lot of sense to actually talk with some of the elected officials directly who have already operated under the Faulkner Act. So, our next speaker is Mayor John Hornett, who is right in the town next to us in Marlboro. And for this segment, I'm going to turn over to Vice Chairman Castling to introduce Mayor Hornett and to go to the Q&A session.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for participating here.
Oops, hold on a second. Let me interrupt you. I think we lost him somehow. Did we lose you?
Yeah, he's gone.
Let's give him a minute here so he could re-log back in and I can promote.
Oh,
Oh,
there
he's
he is.
back.
There he is.
There we go. Great.
Okay. Mayor, thank you for joining us this evening. Mayor was elected in 2007 and is now in his fourth term. He's a lifelong resident of Marlboro Township and resides there with his wife, Daryl, and their three children, Ethan, Olivier, and Sophia. John Hornett has more than 25 years as an attorney with La Roca, Hornett, Rosen, and Greenberg. Chairs their private lender law group advising public and private companies on secured and unsecured loan and equity transactions. Excuse me. He is a member of the Halls of Fame for both Marlboro High School and New Jersey mayors. He was instrumental in forming the Marlboro Teen Advisory Committee, a volunteer group of Marlboro Township teenagers who live by the motto, "Do good." It is now over 1,400 members. Mayor re-energized the Marlboro Economic Development Committee and with a mandate to bring new businesses to Marlboro Township through outreach and promotion. In 2012, the mayor and the Economic Development Committee spearheaded the Shop Marlboro Property Tax Reward Program, the first program of its kind in the United States that rewards residents for shopping locally by directly reducing their property tax. And last year, this program was signed into state law by Governor Murphy. I always see the sign when I drive into your town, so I smile when I see that. The mayor and the Township Council has preserved hundreds of acres of open space. When the mayor was elected, he committed to open government and increased communication, and now has more than 34,000 residents following social media platforms and more than 24,000 receiving township email detailing events. To put that in context, the population is slightly over 40,000. Under his leadership, Marlboro is one of the only 6 towns in New Jersey out of 565 to receive a AAA bond rating from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. So welcome, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Quite the introduction. I didn't write it.
Your publicist did.
I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here for you to ask whatever questions you want to know about our form of government. My question for the chairman or the vice chairman, and I missed the beginning of the meeting. What is causing this review? What is making you guys reevaluate your current form of government?
Why don't I take a stab at that? So our township committee, so right now we're under a township committee form of government, and our township committee passed an ordinance back in July, or introduced the ordinance and then passed it in August to place the question, should a charter study commission be formed? That was a public question as part of 2 other initiatives that was on the November 2021 election. And the ordinance and the statement that went with that was that basically, should certain things be improved upon, we think that generally most of us do believe that Homedale has been a pretty reasonably well-functioning government and so on. But, are there things that could be, looked upon to improve something that's good to be even better? And there were a few things, one in particular, as an example, under the township committee form of government, would not allow, the mayors decided by the township committee, as an example, as you probably know, it's at the beginning of the year at a reorganizational meeting. And a few years back, there was some confusion where an incumbent mayor was re-elected. However, in the January meeting, he was not selected to be the mayor, and there were people that were really confused. I thought I was re-electing so-and-so as mayor for, re-electing him as mayor, and that was not the case. So, one thing came out, are there things where perhaps could be explored and looked at and make something that's good even better kind of thing. So there, unlike other towns, there's at least one other one that's going with Charter Study Commission. There's not a major things, but there are things that there's a sense that could be looked upon, that could be improved upon. And so that's one of several things that I think kind of is the most prominent, if you will.
Got it. Okay, that was good background for me. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Vice Chair or Mr. Chair, how do you want to do this?
Bill, you want to just go to the questions that we normally have?
Well, I failed to get them up, so I defer to you.
Okay.
It may take me a while to find them. Sorry about that.
You have,
I
them-
have a list.
I have them up.
And
I have a list in
please,
front.
Zach, please do it.
Okay, so first one, I think we've heard a lot about, but maybe you want to add some things. Just please describe your current or past role and other experience in local government and administration.
So I was first elected to mayor of Marlboro in 1997. I was 37 years old at the time. I had no prior government experience. A lot of my experience came from my family being involved in local government. My late father, Saul Hornett, served as mayor of the town from 1980 to 1992. So those were the years from my age of 10 years old to 22. So I got to see the town, how it was run, learn government that way. I then went away to college and law school and was practicing law at large law firms in Manhattan when I moved back to Marlboro to raise my family. So, I mean, what caused me to run was I had no plans ever to go into politics. Having watched my father do it, I know how brutal it could be, especially in local politics is the hardest. So first, let me commend everybody who's on this call, because it is a tough business to be in these days. And anybody who chooses to be on a committee or represent a town in a local capacity is definitely a glutton for punishment. But I appreciate you, and I salute all of you. It was that feeling that when I moved back here, I was asked by both the Republican and the Democratic Party to consider running for office. And at that time, I had no interest. But after discussions with my family and after a lot of reflection, I decided that if someone who was born and raised in the town, whose late father had served as mayor of the town, was unwilling to give his time to run the town, then who is supposed to do it? And so that's when I decided that I was going to run. And the other thing that disturbed me, and you guys may remember this, Marlboro had a very dark past with a bad mayor. And he ended up going to jail and was very corrupt. And a lot of our unnatural development occurred because of that. Well, it's never one individual that's bad in corruption. There are other people who tolerate it and watch it happen and say nothing. And when I moved back to town in 2007, those very people who were in office when that corrupt mayor was there were still running the parties in the town. And I could have none of that. So we ended up starting our own party, the Reform Democratic Party, which was the next generation of people returning to town and a whole new breed. And we swept into office. I won in 2007 with 2 council seats. We have a 5-member council, and then we picked up the other 3, and we held 5 seats for over a decade until this last cycle, where we lost 3 seats in the last cycle, which went around in November.
Okay. Any follow-up questions from other commissioners?
Well, I do have a comment. Mayor Hornett mentioned that this is a tough business and we should be commended. I've got to mention the pay is really great, Mayor.
So I'll announce my salary because I'm not embarrassed. I get the same money my father got in the 80s. It's $4,800 a year.
Yeah.
And
by law, we are entitled to no compensation, just so you know.
Oh, you're good. I it's like no compensation because everybody thinks, first of all, everybody thinks it's my full-time job, which is amazing to me because if they ever looked at the salary, I couldn't pay a quarter of my taxes. But that's but look, you do it. You do it for the right reasons. You do it Because it's your community. It's where you're raising your kids. If each of you are unwilling to do it, who gets to do it? I mean, there is nothing more impactful than a local committee on quality of life and the things that are important to your residents. Nothing, people could petition, the governor's office, the state, the state assembly, the Senate, or even Congress. Nobody impacts somebody's life more than a local official. And I have countless stories about it, which is, the ultimate question is, we're in the strong mayor Faulkner Act system here. Directly elected mayor, I answer directly to the people. I answer to the council in terms of explaining to them what we're doing, and they authorize the budget. So it's very similar to the federal government or the state government. It is the most similar to being the governor with the state assembly or the president with Congress. And there's checks and balances on each of the separate aspects of the government. So in our form of government, at least in my town, the mayor in everybody's eyes is responsible for everything. It doesn't matter if it's within my jurisdiction, meaning they think the school's my fault, or when the power goes out, it's my fault. And I'm sure you have a similar thing. In my view, if the public is going to hold me accountable and responsible, I need the most authority I can to impact those things that are important to them. And that's what this form of government on the positive side gives a town. We have made huge strides going forward over the last decade in areas that I never thought would be possible. And my intro, whoever wrote it did a great job, mentioned some of them. Our teen advisory committee, our AAA bond rating from Standard & Poor's and Moody's. These are not easy things to achieve. And I believe in a strong executive leaning government like we have, you have a better chance of achieving it than working as in a committee form or all the other forms that I've heard. Because ultimately, the mayor's responsible. The mayor's staff is responsible. The admin's responsible. We have to answer to our council. We get called in and they ask questions and we're held accountable that way. But with one person in the seat, I believe things get done more quickly, less bureaucracy, less waiting for meetings. But that's just my opinion. And this is the only form I've ever lived in.
When did Marlboro change to a Faulkner Act form?
I believe it was sometime in the 60s.
Wow, that long ago.
Yeah, because my father was elected in 79 and we already had the strong mayor system in.
Could you explain what the check on your power is?
Sure. So nothing can be done that is not within the budget. So the budget is approved by the council. So we don't have flexibility. Everything has to be put out per department, per spent. There is some flexibility in emergency situations, but think of it as the same as Congress. If there's no spending authority on the mayor, there's nothing I could do about it. I can't get anything done. So that's the first check. The other check in our form is we've allocated, and this was probably done in the 60s, which I think it was a mistake in the way it is, because other strong mayors that I'm friendly with that I discussed don't have this. The appointment power of certain aspects of the government were divided between the mayor's office and the council. So they were separated. So the zoning board is on the council level with us. The planning board by statute, state statute, is on the mayor in the mayor's office. So there were divisions made. A lot of towns combine them into the mayor's office, and I think that's appropriate because it's really the same thing. But my guess is when they were switching over, the council people at the time said, "We're not giving everything to the mayor's office. Let us keep this," and that's what happened.
And you have veto power over?
Yes. So we have a five member council. It is 3 to pass a typical ordinance. A bond related ordinance takes 4. And the mayor has the ability to veto it, which could be overruled by 4 votes.
Okay. All right. In terms of describing your current form of government, I think you've done a pretty good job. Is there anything else that we should understand about your form of government and how it operates?
It is, while it is a lot of authority in the mayor's office, the way that we have conducted ourselves, we've included the council as partners in every aspect of what we do. A great example is our budgeting process. You guys know how the budgeting process works, and the state requires you to submit it to council by to your governing body by a date certain, and then to submit it to the state by a different date certain. We prepare the budget and get the council, the 5-member council, in a room in front of the department heads as early as possible. So we bring them into the preparation side, so everybody's fully knowledgeable about what's going on. There should be no debate at a Marlboro Town Council budget introduction or voting meeting, no theatrics, no politics, because everybody had a chance to build that budget from ground zero. We have zero-based budgeting, meaning we start with 0 and we go from there. And I think if you go our route and you go to the Strong Mayor Faulkner Act, I think that's a really important thing to remember. It's very easy to shut the council out, but if you embrace them, you could do great things together. And that's what we've tried to do for the last 14 years.
Is that working group a public session?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do you take charge of the meetings that are held by the council? Do you
No.
set the agenda?
Interesting enough, in the Strong Mayor Faulkner Act, the mayor is an invited guest, non-voting. I actually don't have to attend. Some of my colleagues, Mayor McCormick in Woodbridge, do not attend. Mayor Fulop in Jersey City does not attend. I go because I feel that this is the chance for the residents to see their elected officials, and regardless of what the meeting is called, everybody's always talking to the mayor and asking for something. So, which is fine, and I understand that's the role. I could see myself not going in the future. If what I said was, if politics ever came to play at the local council level, and there were theatrics going on, that I would stop coming to the meetings because I don't like wasting time in that regard. I believe in getting to the fair resolution. I have this saying that I've been saying for a long time now. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or independent. If you're honest and you want to do good work for your town, you have a job. We will find a volunteer job for you, and we will empower you as far as you want to take it. I've never once checked somebody's party affiliation before appointing them, because it's not important to me. What's important to me is that you really want to improve the community, and you have the same vision we have, which is to make Marlboro better every day. Once you elect people who are partisan and and Marlboro had a background of that. There was a lot of political fighting when my dad was mayor, and I saw that the job becomes almost impossible to execute. You have to enjoy fighting with people until 2, 3 in the morning, which I do not want to waste that time. So I would stop coming to the meetings if that was the case.
Need a bulletproof vest, basically. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
What do you think works best about your current form of government?
I just think we could get things done. Just so everybody should know, I'm not a fan of government. I was so disappointed when I was first elected in 2007 and how much bureaucracy there was for something that was something obvious that should be done, that you'd have to wait for the county and the state and then the agency to sign off. Things that in private practice, in the private world, would be done overnight or in a week, takes sometimes years to get done. So that frustrated me. In my form of government, we can move very, very quickly and get things done. And there's I feel that used the right way, it's a way to make great progress quickly. So that's my favorite thing. We could cut out all the red tape in our form of government and get things done. And I'll go back to saying, everybody's holding, your committee responsible. Everybody's holding the mayor responsible in my town. The worst is if they're going to hold me responsible, empower me to make the difference they want me to make. Don't let me, don't just make me a mayor in name only, and then not give me the authority to deliver. And I answer to the people every 4 years. There's no way getting around it. And that's the way our democracy, our republic is supposed to work. You're supposed to perform and you get judged. And, someday I won't be the mayor anymore and there'll be somebody else in this seat and they'll be doing the same thing. They'll be performing and they'll be judged. And if they don't do a good job, they won't be welcome back. And that's how our democracy, our republic was built.
Let me ask this question. Earlier you indicated your 3 councilmen lost, the ones that were aligned with you.
Yep.
What do you attribute that to?
Murphy, anti-democratic sentiment, which I think is proper right now. Just so everybody knows, I was elected as a Democrat. Everybody knows I'm more in the center than anybody. If not, I'm more to the right. So I'm not embarrassed to say it. I think the Democratic brand is damaged right now. I think I think COVID hurt. I think social positions have hurt. I think the White House has hurt. I think President Biden has a very low approval rating right now. And honestly, I think the country is divided. I think it's just very divided. I see it on the Republican side. I see angry Republicans who are calling other good Republicans rhinos for whatever reason because they didn't support Trump. I see Democrats, progressives saying that you're not liberal enough for us. So I just think we're a divided country. And Murphy lost Marlboro by 2,700 votes. Jeff Canner, who's a retired colonel in the Army who had served for 17 years, lost his seat by 45 votes. So all those people came back. So I just think you saw a huge voter turnout. There's a lot of anger out there post-pandemic. And, being in politics for as long as I have, the pendulum swings. I watched, when Barack Obama won, Democrats that shouldn't have won swept in. So it happens, and I think this November you're going to see you'll see a red wave across Congress. I think both houses may flip.
Okay, getting back to some of this, just going back to the form of government. One thing you didn't speak about, but I get the sense it must be a part of how you function, is an administrator. Since you're only making $4,800, I know this isn't your full-time job, and you still have a pretty big town to run. So do you have a strong administrator or that
Yes.
you've appointed? And
Yes.
And how does that structured?
So I believe I have the best business administrator in the state of New Jersey, John Cap. And he is responsible for running the town on a day-to-day basis. I set policy from the mayor's office. We've worked together long enough that he knows when to check in and when not, but he and I are on the same page. We know he is me in the public sector. He's a workaholic. He wants to get things right, and he does everything with a high level of passion. So we found him. He's been here over 10 years now, and he's great. And it's building out the team. Lynn Franco's on this line. She's my confidential aide. I call her the chief of staff. She runs Point. We have a bunch of other people. We have a strong CFO. And, my day is I'm going into my law firm, which I have an office in Freehold, New Jersey. And I call in and get briefed every day on everything that's going on. I talk to Lynn, I talk to John, talk to anybody else I have to. And then all day long, I'm receiving information electronically, or, we set up calls during the day. And I multitask. My job allows for it. Biggest change for me than from my father, they didn't have technology. So he had to go actually sit in the mayor's office to perform the job, which was never good for his business because you can't be in two places at one time. And it's hard to do. Today's day and age with technology, you could execute the demands of the Strong Mayor Faulkner Act with the right staff. So very important to get the right staff in place.
Okay. What could be improved in the way your current form of government works?
I like the form of government. I like the form of government. I think it's the right form for my town, which is a demanding town, a town that wants results and expects a lot of transparency and feedback instantaneously. I saw one of your questions were between partisan and nonpartisan. So I'm going to answer this question based on both prospective, and looking forward. So the retrospective and prospective. The first thing I'm going to say is I would change nothing over the last 14 years. I think our government was efficient. We did a great job, and we've achieved a lot of milestones and moved the town forward. I am concerned about the political divide going forward, and I'm not sure the town benefits from heavy duty, roll up your sleeve politics on the local level. So I would, for the first time, listen to arguments for a nonpartisan based government, which I missed Mrs. Sass's description of all the stuff because I logged on a little late. But I would be interested to hear that only because of what I'm seeing in politics today, which is so disturbing. Nonpartisan form government, I would be interested in hearing about.
Okay, I'm just writing notes and then I will ask the next question. Okay, all right, so we get to the next part is the Faulkner forms of government and others offer several options within the overall structure. So please provide your thoughts about what option your town has chosen, any considerations that led to the choice, if you know, and your thoughts on any advantages or disadvantages of the alternate choice. So electing the mayor directly by the residents versus by the town council.
I always got a
I assume
feeling.
you elect at large, right?
Yes, townwide at large, 28 districts, 14,000, 15, for
Yeah.
last election had about 14,000 voters. Again, that came out. Yeah, townwide, it's a big election. I don't know why the town decided to go this route. I think it was the right route for our town. Ultimately, with one caveat, if you get a corrupt mayor like we had in the 90s, it is devastating. And I think that is harder to have for a corrupt mayor to operate today with all the transparency, with all the meetings being put on, with all the way social media works today. So I think a lot of that is in check. There are a lot more eyes on than there were way back when. So I think that problem dissipates. And, at the end of the day, the people get who they elect. So, if they elect the thug, that's who they get. It happens in all levels of government. I don't know what forced us to make this choice in our history because it was before I was born. But I do think it's the right form.
Right. Okay, the number of members on your council, you mentioned you have 5 council
Yes.
members. Do you know if there was consideration of larger 7 or 9 or?
I don't, but it's always been, it was this way in the, when my dad was elected, it was 5. So it's been this way since the 70s.
If you had the choice, would you try to change it?
No, I don't think 7, as long as it's an odd number, I think it's fine. So you could get to a majority. I don't think 7 adds anything or 9 adds anything. I don't think there's a reason. There are 5 at-large members. I think the only reason you would change it, in my mind, is if 5 members couldn't adequately represent the different demographics of your town. So I know that Jersey City has a large number. They're a big town. They have over 100,000 people, and they have diverse communities. So electing people for proper representation on the local level is important there to have a larger number. I don't see the need in Marlboro. I think 5 adequately covers our square miles as well as the demographic of our population.
You started to mention about this, holding elections on a partisan versus a nonpartisan basis. Want to add anything?
Not just what I, previously
So
said.
currently you elect on a partisan basis?
Yes.
Okay.
We have 2 parties in town. We have chairmen of those parties. We have, committee members from two from each of the 28 districts. They have the authority to appoint. Different from what was said before, and I think this is different on the Democratic side than the Republican side in Monmouth County. And just to clear the record, I'm friends with both sides, very close with both sides. The county government on the Democratic side has virtually nothing to do with Marlboro. I mean, there's no discussions at all. I think that's different on the Republican side, but that's just could be the makeups of the town. But we virtually have no contact with them.
Interesting.
Any comments about, I assume you're electing all of your members by law at large. There's
Yes.
a consideration you could do it by wards. Do you think would be any value to that?
The ward goes to the demographic, representation concept that I mentioned before. If you had certain sections that you felt were growing and needed to be represented, they needed to have a voice on the governing body. That's when I think you'd break up into wards. You see it more in urban areas where pockets of people live, but I don't see the need for it in Marlboro or Homedale.
Okay.
Can I go back to, let me go back to the prior question. How did the ballot appear for Marlboro last election? Were the incumbents on one line and the others who ultimately won on a separate line? How did it appear?
They are divided by party. So it started with Governor Murphy on top and dropped down to the local level with the 3 Democratic candidates who were the incumbents running. And then you had the Republican side from top to bottom, Jack Citarelli, all the way down to the 3 Republican candidates who ended up winning.
Okay, so I understand now. I thought perhaps some other Democrats won, but you're saying the Republicans took 2 seats.
Yes, 3 seats.
Thank you. 3 seats, yes.
I have a question. Is it always Democrats and Republicans? Do you ever have independents running?
We have in Marlboro's history had independents running. They were more disruptors. So what they would do is they really didn't have a chance to win. What they do is they usually split a party, whether they came from the Democratic side or the Republican side. And sometimes, knowing Marlboro politics of its past, they were asked to run in order to achieve that goal.
Are your elections held concurrently or on a staggered basis? And
Staggered.
Okay.
So the mayor runs with 2 council people and then 3 councils. So control the councils up opposite of the mayor's. So that's the balance. So the mayor will run with 2 council candidates. They won't be able to take control of the governing body in the same election the mayor seats up. And then 3 council candidates run 2 years later.
The
So
seats are
your
held
elections
4
are every
years.
other year.
The seats are held 4 years, right?
Correct. Yes, every other year.
Okay.
I'm sorry, it's every 2 years.
Yeah, every 2 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
While you're typing notes, let me go back to, you talked about having a bad mayor. So you need to, if you're going to vote him out, it's going to be 4 years. Do you have a process to get rid of a mayor that,
I would, there is no process that I know of other than impeachment. So
Mhm.
there's probably an impeachment process. There's definitely a recall mechanism under the Faulkner Act. I'm not familiar with it though. Thank God. No, it hasn't happened.
Now,
There's-
indictment and
there's-
prosecution will be a factor in removing somebody, right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Indictment and prosecution and indictment would be a factor, I hope.
Yeah, it would be a factor, but the public can get together on for a recall. So they could, and if I recall correctly, there is a percentage of signatures they have to get of the amount that the elected official was elected for last time. I don't know why 70% is ringing in my head. So they need to get, so if you won by, 10,000 votes were cast and you won by 7,000 votes, you'd have to get 70% of 7,000, which is a large number to get on a recall. They don't make it easy. As far as indictment or criminal charges, I'm sure the governing body would censure the mayor, would, vote some kind of resolution of no confidence, and politically, I'm sure they wouldn't be able to get stuff done. They could do their job. That's really, when you see people step down, look at just what happened to Governor Cuomo of New York, right? It turns out he was accused by a lot of people of wrongdoing, and he ended up stepping down, and there's been no one prosecuting him. So, the political pressure came from the Albany Assembly, the Albany Senate. They wouldn't, he couldn't govern anymore. The ability to govern is the people to listen to you. And if they say no, you have to take action. And if you don't have the support to take the action, you lose your ability to govern.
So the petition and referendum component of the Faulkner Act forms of government allows that to take place? Am I reading this right? Or is it
I don't
something
think it deals with recall. I think
Oh.
that
I'm
must be.
sorry, we're probably getting into the weeds here a
But-
little bit, but
But
there is a
yeah, well,
separate
we're gonna
recall.
go.
separate recall? Okay.
I'm
If
sorry,
I
I was talking while Commissioner Gilston was.
Yeah,
Well,
so
we're
why don't
probably
we,
jumping into the weeds a
when we
little
set
bit.
the recall question apart, we can look into that.
Yeah,
or
if I
maybe
can jump
Kevin
in.
could-
The
All right.
recall, the Uniform Recall Election Act, it's called. It's a section of state law. It applies to every single municipality in the same way. So really, that's not a factor in which form is chosen.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you. I
All right.
learned something.
okay. All right. But so now we're going to talk about referendum and initiative. So for those operating under a Faulkner form of government, under the Faulkner forms of government, residents can petition for a referendum on something that the council has passed, or they can petition for an initiative on something they would like to do by getting 10% of the voters to sign a petition, the number of voters in the last election, I believe. Have the residents in your town ever done this?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. What do you think about this opportunity for the voters?
We have chosen to put things as the governing body, mayor's office, on petitions on for referendum in our past. I believe referendums are used for political cover for those who don't want to make difficult decisions. I don't believe it's a real check on the governing body or the mayor. I think when something should be done, it should be done, and you lead through example. I don't believe that the referendum, I think to me, it's a cop-out. And I think people, like I said, I think if people are scared to make the decision that should be made, they put it on a referendum, and then they could use the people didn't vote for it, or they did vote for it, and go that way.
Well, I'm an open space guy, so you have to have a referendum in that case for the open space tax.
And we do it all the time. That's required, but that's required by statute. The question was on something that was brought by the residents to try to make a change, or if the governing body or the mayor put something on. We had a controversial, we were discussing a referendum years ago after the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting. Do you guys remember that tragedy? That's the one where 4 and 5-year-olds were murdered in an elementary school in Connecticut. And we decided at the time, the mayor's office decided at the time, that we want our police officers in Marlboro schools. And we went to the Board of Ed. We said, we're going to put them there and we want you guys to allow it. They ended up allowing it. And there was discussion about going to a referendum to the town to see if they wanted it. And to me, I think that was we never ended up doing it. I don't think that's something for the town to decide. We did end up pulling it, and it was 52% for, 48% against. Interesting enough. But for me, if you ask me what keeps me up at night, it's one of those incidents happening in one of our schools. And so for me, the best way to protect it, to do my job, was to have police there. So I don't think that's something that should be left up to the public to decide. I think that goes to electing the mayor or the council. And again, you have to answer every 4 years directly to the public. So if they didn't like it, they just wouldn't have reelected me.
If I could interrupt, there are instances where it could make a difference. I can tell you in Homedale, for example, Homedale is under a township committee form of government. It actually does not have initiative and referendum, except in certain things like for a bond ordinance, because basically the taxpayer have to shoulder the debt. So there is, so we had back, I guess 7 years ago now, 6 years ago, that there was an ordinance passed for a bond ordinance passed to have build certain recreational areas in certain areas which the residents were opposed to. And there was a big public hearing. I remember it, and it lasted till almost midnight. And notwithstanding that, the township committee nevertheless passed the bond ordinance, and the people decided, because it was permitted, they actually did get the required number of signatures under the petition, and said that we want this to be a referendum to be decided by the people. And actually then the township committee then said, oh, okay. And they actually then rescinded that bond ordinance. So there are instances now, unfortunately, that only applies to a very specific case. That was a bond ordinance, and that is allowed. But in other ordinances, that's not going to be allowed. You know, so there are instances where I could see how it could work.
So we used to have our school elections in April, and part of the incentive to move them to November that the government provided was that the school board no longer had to go to the public to have its budget approved. Right. I can't tell now, you know, in my humble opinion, there are a couple things you got to get right to have a great town. Having good schools is definitely the top two. Okay, it has to be. And you have to, you can't let politics enter the school board. Once you bring elections into budgets, you will start watching it happen. It's terrible. So year after year, Marlboro had a great record of passing what I thought were fair budgets. And then something changed and they could not get a budget passed. Same thing happened to the Freehold regional system. One year, all the mayors had to come in and from the 8 sending towns, and we had to work it out, a budget, a fair budget. We had to cut a certain amount. There was all these rules. I think, especially in this day and age, it's very dangerous to have to go to the public on issues. I think the better way is to entrust the people they elected to make the right decisions, because talking about slow moving and the inability to make progress, if you have to keep going back to the public on issues because people are scared to take a stance or unsure about what to do, I just don't think that's an efficient way to run a town.
Well, I would submit that the opportunity for initiative and referendum in these Faulkner forms of government isn't to slow down. It's just to be a check on the governing body, that if you don't like something, then you have that opportunity. Like in this one case where it was a budget thing, so we had that opportunity and people got together and said, wait a minute, you're definitely doing something antithetical to what the public wants. So there was a remedy. But, you know, the council went ahead and would have just gone on made its decision. They weren't saying, well, wait a minute, we better have a referendum on this. But at least the public had that opportunity. So, okay, but I understand your perspective on that. Any other follow-ups from any of the other commissioners?
No.
Okay, so the last two questions are, it's sort of, it just gives you a chance to repeat some of the things you've said if you want to reiterate or accentuate anything. If you could make any changes to your current form of government, what would they be and why? And is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
I addressed the changes, and my answer only changed because of how politically divided the world seems to be. It's unfortunate. I feel like, I always say on the local level, there's no different way between the way a Democrat or Republican fills a pothole or plows a street or helps somebody who's in need. And there's such national divide now, and even statewide divide, that it's leaked down to the local level for the first time in a long time. And I think that's unfortunate. So going back to it, if that continues, maybe a nonpartisan switch would be appropriate. I'm not ready to say that now, but it was the first time I'd listened to that. I enjoy public service as the thing, I'd like to share. I think it's meaningful. I was taught that it was each of our obligation to give back to our community by my father, and it was instilled in my family. I hope I instilled that in my children. I hope that when they go to their towns, that they want to participate the way they saw their father do it and their grandfather. I think that's really important, and that's what makes communities work and special. I think, all forms work. I will, close with the same thing I said. I commend each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to work for your public. It's so important and meaningful, and you have plenty of other things to do. You have businesses, you have families, you have a life, and to do this is special. So I appreciate it. As a neighboring town, Homedale has a tremendous reputation. It's really great. Let me ask you a question. Who did this committee do the Bell Works?
No.
That's primarily the Township Committee in conjunction with the planning board and so on. We're a charter study commission. We were only formed after the November 2021 election for only one purpose and one purpose only. That is to look at our current form of government, study it. Are there ways we could improve it, and make any recommendations?
So I'll just tell you that improvement to your town is tremendous. It's an asset. It takes foresight. Whoever was responsible for that, I don't know if there's crossover for people on this committee and the township. I got to tell you, what a vision and what a partnership. Those type of, whoever did that, whoever, cares about their town, is leaving a legacy item that makes sense. And that, that said, I walk in that place and have a sense of pride. And it's not even my town. So that's, those type of things are special. So you keep doing stuff like that. So, I commend you guys.
We absolutely agree with you, but this is a joke now. We probably have close to, 17, 18,000 people, but I think 20,000 people take credit for Bell Works. So, but yeah, no, there's a number of people that were involved. And as you can imagine, through different administrations, if you will, with the Township Committee, these things don't happen overnight. So it's multi-generation in terms of different agreements with Bell Works. So a number of people are saying they get credit for it, and rightfully they do. But it's probably no one individual, but there was a series of folks that were involved in different administration of the Township Committee. But before I forget, I also want to say right back at you in terms of, we know what long years of service you have there, and what you say about everything is so true. We know the time commitment, and we jokingly said we get no compensation where you get 4,800 or something like that. But even that doesn't come anywhere close to the time and effort you put in. I know that, as a practicing lawyer, I won't get into the details of what you bill, but, some of the, at least in private practice as opposed to public service, it doesn't cover a lot of hours. So, we appreciate what you're doing.
We
over
commend
there.
you.
I put it this way, this call's been about an hour. The town would have about 6 hours left of my time for the year, assuming nothing the first 3 months.
I have a question specific to Marlboro. What are you guys doing over where the old mental hospital is?
So
see.
a great question. So that's state owned. So there was a deal cut between the Christie administration, the county, and Marlboro that is going to be cleaned up and become a county park. So it's 411 acres. It should be more like Homedale Park, but it'll be Marlboro Park in Marlboro. It'll be owned by the county and added to the county park system.
Wonderful. So when will that happen, Mayor? Do you know?
It's a great question. It's been which brings my example of government moves slow. So they've been cleaning it up. They've been removing the buildings.
Yeah.
I will tell you, interesting enough, we provided security there, our police, for years. And the rumor is that place is haunted. And so around Halloween, we have a ton of people coming in and asking, real life Ghostbusters asked to go in to look around what's going on. It's you can't make it up. But
Wow.
I think it'll actually, when it does get dedicated as a park, I think it'll have a huge following during the fall and Halloween time, that people just want to be there. There's something magical about that place, or mysterious, or spooky, or however you want to say it. But it's something I'd like to see done in the next year. I think it's all related to the budget. It's hard to get people's attention today on stuff like that, but
yeah. Well, good luck with that. That would be a worthy cause, I think, what you just told us.
absolutely.
Supposedly, it's when the bond issue for the site remediation gets paid off. And I think that's some time away yet.
All right.
Any other
Okay.
questions? Thank you very
Well,
much.
this has been outstanding. Mayor, thank you for participating today. Wealth of knowledge, and can't thank you enough.
My
Yeah,
pleasure, guys. Good luck.
Great
Any
discussion.
follow-up? Happy to give you follow-up if you need it. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any new business from commissioners before we go into public comment session?
None here.
No? Okay. Counselor, did I understand right that you may want to read a statement or make a comment?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I asked just to make a comment, given some of the prior comments during the public portion. I thought there was maybe some misunderstanding, or maybe we can refocus some of the debate. And I just wanted to review, really for members of the public primarily, what the purpose of this Charter Study Commission is, why you're here. You're here to review the current form of government, to see if there are alternatives, and to make a recommendation as to whether the form should be changed. There seems to be a misimpression that this body can change the form of government. You can't. The key word is you can recommend. Only the residents of Homedale have the right, and if you make a recommendation, all that would do is put it on the ballot. It would have to be voted by members, by the voters in Homedale. They're the only ones that can affect any change. So the purpose of these hearings is for both the commissioners and the public to get information, help in that decision. And this meeting is subject to the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. That's a state law. It says that all discussions have to be held in public. Notice of the date and time has to be given, a published agenda, and the public has the right to observe the proceedings. All of that's happened with every meeting that this commission has had so far. Everything has been done publicly in meetings like this one. And in addition, the public has been given the opportunity, as I think they will for this meeting in just a minute or two, to comment at every meeting. And there was one hearing held specifically just for the public comment. The invited guests who are attending are here to give information. I think there was some request by the public to question them. This is not a trial or an adversarial proceeding, as in legal terms. This is or a deposition. This is does not give the public right to cross-examine the witnesses or the commissioners. The right of the public is to during public comment is to give comments, and certainly the public is free to give their views on government, the form of government, where they think Homedale should go, what is best suited for Homedale. I would suggest, though, that while constructive input is welcome, diverse viewpoints are welcome, personal attacks really are not productive, and in my view, are just not warranted here. The process designed to allow for the commissioners and ultimately the residents to get information to determine the best form of government for Homedale. And Mr. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to make that statement before we went to public comment tonight because of just some past comments have been made. I wanted to make that clarification. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to open up for public comment. Anyone interested in making a comment? If you look on the lower bottom, you should see an icon that looks like a hand or the palm of your hand. You click on that, that will raise your hand and that will let us know that you wish to speak. And when we call on you, you can state your name and address, and you'll be given 3 minutes to make any public comments. So just make sure at the lower bottom of the screen, there's a raise hand. So let me give opportunity for people to see if there's anyone. I have one right now, Carol. Carol, I'm not sure if you raised your hand or not, but if you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Carol Balmer, 4 Spradley Lane, Middletown. I really had 2 questions for Mayor Hornett. And one was, he mentioned in the beginning that they have no contact with the county. Was he referring to the ballot? If you could get a clarification on that, or if the fact, I don't understand what he meant when really they have no contact with the county, as far as maybe government or as far as positions are concerned. Obviously, Marlboro, like Colts Neck and other townships, have to go through the county with wastewater management plans, for example. And I'm wondering how he meant that, whether it was just on the ballot issue as far as operating under the Faulkner Act. The other thing I wanted to ask the mayor is, what happened to that bad mayor? Did he get thrown out of office? Did he get not reelected? What had happened there? So those are my 2 questions.
Went to jail.
He went to jail? Really?
That was what Mayor Hornett said, that he
Okay.
went to jail. And just the context of his comment about they have no interaction with the county was with regards to setting who would be on their ballot.
Okay, so that was the setup of the ballot. Is that what you're talking about?
No, not the setup, but just who would be on it on the Democratic line.
Okay, and also, do you know if the mayor is Republican or Democrat?
He mentioned that he
Mayor
was a
Hornett?
he mentioned that he was a centrist Democrat.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you
yeah,
very much.
he said he was on the right side of the Democratic Party, which
Yeah.
I don't know if that existed or not, but I guess.
Versus the left side? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, he was answering it from the standpoint of a Democrat.
Right.
So they obviously were Republicans that perhaps might have had county interaction.
Okay, our next speaker is John Giampolo.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
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 Thank you. John Giampolo, 43 Blue Hills Drive. First question that I have is, and going from the statement that the councilor just made, if you make a recommendation which is then going to be placed on the ballot for voters to decide. If, for example, you make a recommendation to change our elections to nonpartisan, is there going to be any disclosure on the ballot that this Charter Study Commission and members of it have been campaigning for and requesting that change to our government before you even got started in your study? Because otherwise, voters will be deceived into thinking that that recommendation was the result of an impartial, objective study, when it obviously was not. Because on your websites and Facebook pages, for example, since at least early February, you have been posting in large letters still, Homedale residents want change to nonpartisan government, or Homedale residents request a commission for change to nonpartisan government. Similar question is, if, for example, by way of another example, if one of your recommendations on the ballot, and that ends up being on the ballot, is to make one of the changes that we heard Mayor Bontempo ask for during a previous Charter Study Commission meeting, such as less frequent elections for the mayor, are you going to disclose on the ballot that it was something the current mayor asked you for, rather than just a recommendation that you came to through an objective, impartial study? Because again, otherwise voters could very easily be deceived and misled to think it was a recommendation that was reached after an objective, impartial study, when it was not. And by way of comparison, if you look at I looked at the website and Facebook pages of another Charter Study Commission going on in Red Bank. Nowhere on their website or Facebook pages do I see anyone from that or promoting changes when they're still of studying, as opposed to be performing objective, impartial studies.
You're breaking up, John.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but you were breaking up there for a few seconds.
The last thing that I said was, by way of comparison, if you look at Red Bank performing a Charter Study Commission, where on Red's website or Facebook page do I see them promoting or campaigning for any changes that they're supposed to be studying while they're in the process of studying?
Ken, you need to unmute.
All right, thank you. Kevin, is there any comment you want to make, or?
I just wanted to say, in response to the question about what goes on the ballot, that if a recommendation is made, the state law is very specific and very narrow on what can go on the ballot. It is only the question. There cannot be, sometimes you get things called interpretive statements that can be put on that is, in some circumstances, are designed to give information to the voter. That is not the case here. Only the question that is established by state law can go on the ballot.
Thank you. I should mention that there's references more than one time now about things on our website. There are, we typically would have next meetings, announcements, but also if there's something in the press about a Charter Study Commission, in this case, the commission held a public hearing just for the public to make comments about, doing phase one. And there was an article that reported on that, written by a reporter for Two River Times. And that was the headline for a news article. And if you want to interpret whatever you want to interpret, but it was a reference on the reporting of the public hearing. So another hand up is Tom Santora. If you could state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, Tom Santora, 8 Willow Road. Thank you for taking my question. I think it's time for, we should probably meet in person. Hopefully next meeting will be in person as opposed to Zoom. That was just a comment. My question is, when do you believe the charter study will conclude their findings and make the recommendation? And will this be on the June ballot or the November ballot?
Okay, is that all your questions, sir?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, did you want to take a stab at that or?
Yes, I can tell you the parameters of for the Charter Study Commission, what your time frame is. You need to conclude your study, your work, and issue a report, either recommending a change or not, within 9 months of your election. Your election was in early November, so you have until, I believe it is sometime in August to issue a report. That's by statute. You can do it sooner than that. You cannot do it later than that. Upon the issuance of a report, the Charter Study Commission is then dissolved automatically. Your question cannot go on the ballot at the June primary. The reason for that is because those are partisan ballots. They're separate ballots. So the question is going to go on a single ballot, and it will be at either a special election on a special election date or at the general election in November. So those are your parameters.
Thank you. Next person I have is, hopefully I don't butcher up the name too much, Janelle Michella.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can. State your name
Okay.
and address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Hi, yes, I'm Janelle Michella. I live at 2 Oak Tree Lane. I guess I had a different question, but my follow-up to what was just being discussed would be, if we had a special election, would that be an additional cost to Homedale residents? And would that be shared and put to a vote by the Homedale residents prior to, so that we would have the option of saying this is an important enough issue to be made a special election and incur such a cost? Or you know what, this is a great issue, but it's not worthy of such a cost, and I would prefer to use that money towards something like improving our schools or preserving Potter's Farm, let's say. So I'd prefer if you save that until November. Will Homedale residents have that ability, and will that information on cost and cost sharing be shared with us? So that's a new question that I just thought of in response to the last speaker. But my original question, which I raised my hand for, would be, how will the information at the conclusion of stage 2, thank you for having all these people here tonight. I actually think that they were very beneficial in the information that they shared. So how will the conclusion of stage 2, how will the information that you've gathered from the speakers and whatever other forms of research you're doing be shared with the Homedale population prior to you making recommendations, so that we have comparison models? And what type of comparison models will you plan on having? Will there be, like bar graphs or surveys? And in these comparisons, are there public opinion? Because we're hearing a lot of the benefits of the different forms and also some of the opposition of other forms from the different people that are coming on. However, we're hearing from the people in those forms of government that are leaders. So clearly they are enjoying the benefit of that, which there might be a lot of benefit, and the people might also feel that way. But it would be nice if we heard from the residents as well. Is there any ability, or do you have any plan to gather resident, survey from these towns as well? And how will all that data be shared prior to any recommendations made by the committee, and prior to any possible things made to set to vote?
Okay.
If I made that clear, sorry.
No, that's, is that it for all your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone want to take a stab at it, or?
Well, Kevin I'm sure can speak to whether the Homedale residents can decide not to have a special election. So why don't you to that, Kevin?
Sure. There were good questions. And I can say that the ultimate question here, the ultimate decision here is going to be made by the Homedale residents on whether or not government has changed. So in terms of whether there's going to be a survey or not, in a way, there will be. If there's a recommendation, the survey will be at the ballot box. The Homedale residents have the final say on what happens. In terms of how to get this information out, how it's sort of compiled or put together, these meetings are public. I think I don't know if they're on YouTube. They're posted somewhere, the public can come see them. But phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 will be summarized and compiled into the final report that is issued to the residents, and that'll be, if it's a special election, that will have to be at least 60 days before the special election, so there'll be an opportunity to review that. The decision on whether it is a special election or a general election is within the realm of the Charter Study Commission to decide based on when your report is issued. The issuance of the report triggers when the election will be. So
Thank you, Kevin. I did want to mention, in case, I know that there are some new people on here, but so all the meetings are recorded, and they are certainly on, if you go to YouTube and look under Homedale Township channel, you see all their meetings, which include not only the Charter Study Commission, Township Committee, Planning Board, Zoning Board, and I just realized there's a Zoning Board meeting today. That could be why we weren't being live streamed, because there's a conflict there. But that could be why. But and then 2 is the presentation during phase 2. In terms of the various alternate forms of government by the 2 experts on there, they are posted on the website, and they should be within the next several days. Should be posted on the Homedale Township website as well. So the actual presentation, and you can certainly watch the video. Again, recording of those are already there. And then finally, as Kevin said, the expectation is that once we are finished with phase 2, then there will be a public discussion, deliberation, and recommendation. And from there, that will all have to be all kind of drafted into a written report, because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor, is that the end product, after it's all said and done, what this Charter Study Commission will need to do, if it deems that it wants to make recommendation, is to have to file a report. And that report will consist of whatever recommendation, which will be the public question, but as well as whatever, the supporting, what the process, what the procedure, what we've gone through, whatever that will go into, it could be, who knows, 100-page report or something like that, and all boil down to the recommendation. So all that will come out at the end of that process. And so all the information right now, if it's not already on Homedale Township website or the Charter Study Commission website, they will be in the next several days. But I know that on the Charter Study website, there's already the presentations, as well as the video recording of the things that we have already.
Just one thing I would add, can maybe help to clarify, is just as we had a public, we dedicated a meeting for a public hearing on phase 1, we do expect to have a dedicated meeting for a public hearing on phase 2, do we not?
Yes, that we were anticipating that. I thought she was addressing like some of the information and things like that. Obviously, we plan to have at least one more public hearing that's dedicated to getting receiving input from the public. Okay. The next person I have is Tom Wood. Can you please state your name and address? And you have 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, hi, this is Tom Wood. I live at 20 Heather Hill Way in Homedale. First, I'd like again to thank all the members of the Charter Study Commission for your hard work and dedication and seriousness in considering this very important issue and putting forth this and other meetings. With respect to Mayor Hornett's comments, I thought his perspective was interesting. It's clear that the way the form of government is structured impacts the way that the office holder thinks about his job, how much power he has, what he's got to do, who he represents. It seemed like he definitely he spoke in a way that I've never heard a mayor of Homedale speak. I'm not quite sure whether I'm entirely happy with one way or another, but it's clearly what you're doing is important. Structure does matter. I guess I would like to comment about a potential landmine, which was uncovered in his presentation. So Kinji pointed out that under our current form of government, the voters have the opportunity to force a plebiscite on bond issues. And I believe that's true for other expenditures from the Township Committee. And I would be concerned if you recommended a form of government where that was no longer the case. So I guess my first question is, how does the potential changes in form of government impact the ability of the voters to affect spending that's decreed by the government? So that's one question. And I have a separate comment on Dr. Rubin's presentation. So Dr. Rubin's presentation I found fascinating. I've been a voter in a couple of other states, and I never really appreciated how different New Jersey is from other states and how confusing the ballots can be for both the primary and the general election, and how powerful they can be. I mean, I never would have believed in my wildest dreams that we had an election in New Jersey where more than a third of the ballots were discarded because they were improperly marked. And obviously the best solution would be for the state legislature to get off their butts and change the rules, but I don't think we're going to hold our breath and wait for that to happen. So I think anything you guys can do to improve the situation in Homedale would be a great step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Do you want to
I
respond
could
to
take a
Tom's?
stab at it unless anyone else want to. So let me, there was one question asked, since he named me particular in terms of landmine, but the bond one, Counselor, jump in if I'm giving the wrong answer, but my understanding that is it's a state law, not specific forms of government that basically says because the indebtedness of any bond owners is paid for by taxpayers, the ability to petition to stop that, is therefore allows them the ability to petition to stop this. So that's a statewide law that supersedes any particular forms of government. And in the other forms of government in Faulkner Act, they all allow initiative and referendum by petition, which is also, it's much more expansive, if you will, than the limited referendum you would have with respect to bond ordinance. So I don't know, Counselor, if you want to add anything to that. He's going to probably cite the actual law on that, but that's okay.
No, I'm sorry. You're right. The sort of like the same answer I gave on the recall election, the right to have a referendum to object to a bond ordinance is available in all municipalities. So that won't change regardless of what you choose. But in the Faulkner Act, there's much broader rights for initiative and referendum. Right. What that is essentially is the citizens can propose ordinances by petition and can object to a wide variety of ordinances also by submitting a petition. It's not used very much, but when there are hot button issues, it can certainly be a factor and can be used effectively. And that's only in the Faulkner Act.
Thank you. Okay, the next speaker is Christian Damari. Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
Chris Damari, 7 Oaks Drive. The township form of government is already the best for Homedale. The Faulkner Act, primarily utilized by the largest New Jersey cities, such as Newark, Patterson, Trenton, Camden, Jersey City, to change their forms of government, usually then seeing long-term mayor tenures, very strong power, and a lot of corruption. In our historical small town of Homedale, 18K population range, only 2 out of the 15 towns have ever leveraged the Faulkner Act. Why are we talking about this in our town during a pandemic? You brought on this show, study, Ocean Township Mayor, 28,000 residents. Ocean changed to a council manager form of government. There's a Democrat mayor serving his 6th year, second 4-year term on his way to a long run. In 2019, his full slate of Democratic candidates took over the entire council. You've got yourself a very powerful situation going on there. Not good. Democratic State Senator Vin Gopal had made an endorsement in this local election. This certainly sounds like an even worse party boss scenario than the one in Homedale that we keep hearing about. This form of government is not going to solve what seems to be one of the biggest problems for this small group of families in Homedale, and a primary reason why this charter study exists: a party boss influencing elections. Tonight we met the mayor of Marlboro, over 40,000 residents, double Homedale. Marlboro converted to a mayor-council form of government back in the 60s, defined as the strong mayor form. A Democrat mayor now in power since 2007, an extremely long time. He ran unopposed in 2019 for his fourth four-year term, as it is extremely challenging to unseat a long-term powerful mayor. Marlboro calls him the CEO of the town. His father was also the mayor prior for 12 years. He said tonight that one of the biggest risks is if you end up with a corrupt politician in this seat, it is devastating. In Homedale, we already have the best government in the township form. We elect 5 committee members at large in 3-year overlapping terms. This committee appoints and rotates the mayor annually. The balance of power is in the committee. We do not allow a mayor to become this strong, powerful figure. Current Homedale committee is diverse: 2 Republicans, 2 independents, and Mayor Bontempo ran and won non-endorsed and doesn't seem to be representing the Republican values anymore. This system has been working for over 150 years. These other forms of government create power in the mayor and a start to big government, and certainly an increase in taxes. For the many, many of my fellow residents that feel the same way and not wanting to change Homedale, I am standing here tonight for all of us who love this small town and want to protect our township form of government and preserve Homedale's legacy. As the Faulkner Act states, let's have a dialogue tonight, commissioners. Please tell us what you feel are the pros and cons to what is going on in Ocean and Marlboro, and why changing Homedale to either forms of government will be good for the residents. Chris.
Is that all your questions or comments, sir?
Yeah, I'd like to have a dialogue on what we think of the pros and cons from the commissioners, so we can hear from you based on what's going on in Ocean and Marlboro and why that would be possibly good for Homedale or bad. I explained why I think it's bad.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. I don't know if anyone want to comment. I certainly am. We are in phase 2, which is explore the various options. The Charter Study Commission have not made any recommendation, have not had any discussion. I think that there seems to be a jumping into it, but more importantly is that there are small towns that in fact have, I think to use his term, lever Faulkner Act. I'm not sure I understand that term, but I am a finance major, but there are small towns that in fact have elected to switch to a form of government under Faulkner Act. Belmar is 6,000 people. Some of the other towns, Keensburg is even less smaller than us. So it's not only for the big cities. Yes, some of the big cities clearly have that, but there are lots of towns, within the same population size as ours. So, I don't see any more hands up unless I'm missing anything. Okay, I see one just popped up. Hold on, please.
Ken, before we go on to the next.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think the process that was asked for will happen, but we're not, maybe I'm saying what you just said, Ken. It's not tonight. I'm still digesting everything that has come in. So I don't think this is the time to be answering specifically about each town. We haven't been doing that all along. I need to go through everything that's been done. I need to review everything and take it all together. So we will be addressing the questions of why is this good? Why is that better? What is good? What is not? But it's not tonight. It will happen. It's just not tonight.
Yeah, and I maybe just elaborate. I'm not absolutely. That's where with phase 3 comes in. I guess I was specifically. I don't think it's addressing why Ocean Township or any other towns. The purpose of us asking these towns is that we got in presentation. We got them 2 pretty good presentations on the different forms of government we can consider, and we should have a dialogue about that. And then we thought it might be a really good idea to actually talk to the people who are currently in those forms of government. But we're not jumping up and down and say, hey, Marlboro is great, we should do this, or Ocean is do that, which I thought it was sort of, I think, in a larger context, not specific towns, to say that, when we have that discussion and deliberation, where it's mayor, council form of government, was council manager form of government, absolutely, that's where we need to kind of have that discussion. But I don't think it's in the context with what is it about Ocean, but rather that form of government and the options that allow, and compared to maybe, what we have now and what changes and input that we gotten so far. So I'm sorry, Regina, I put you up there and then we made you wait. So if you can state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Regina Criscione, 35 Rambling Brook Drive. I wanted to make a statement about the two speakers, but I would like to say things about two people who spoke tonight. Mr. Damari questioned how Mayor Hornett got re-elected 3 times. There is the possibility it could be that he's doing a very good job and people are happy with him. That could be one possibility. If that's not true, the other possibility is because of this whole situation of being on the party line. I don't know if he was or not, but that would be all the more reason why we should go for nonpartisan elections. So somebody doesn't stay in office just because he's the incumbent. The other speaker was Mr. Gianpolo, if I'm saying it properly. I should be able to since I'm Italian. He was talking about putting a disclaimer on the ballot. I know that is not allowed, but my thought is if it was allowed, that would be very inappropriate because that would actually be biasing the voters. The voters should hear the question. The question should be as non-biasedly written, if that's a word, as possible. So putting any kind of disclaimer like that on it would actually bias the voters one way or the other. So that's that. As far as the speakers, Mayor Hornett sounded wonderful. Everything he was talking about, the kind of government with a strong mayor, sounded wonderful because it does do away with a lot of bureaucracy. Things get done faster. The problem is, as he said, if you have a bad mayor, that's a real problem. And that mayor might be stuck there because because of the system we have, the way the ballot is designed. Since the other spoke, Dr. Rubin, was it, said that 1/3 of the people on the party line, they have that advantage of 35%. If you have a strong mayor, you cannot have a partisan election, just to prevent that kind of thing. So those are my 2 statements. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to second what Janet said, that and I've seen some head nodding here among the commission, that once we've studied all the forms of government, that's when we'll address which are most appropriate to be considered and make our final recommendation. And there'll be public comment periods on that session, as well as a public only comment session at the end of this phase. So it would be inappropriate for us to comment on things when we haven't heard all the alternatives.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do not see any more hands up. So I will close the public comment session. Can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Very much.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Yep. Thanks a lot, everybody.